Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of moral lessons from the Quran. We discuss various passages from the Quran every day in this holy month of Ramadan. And the purpose is to remind ourselves of this innate morality that we have in us and to keep up with this holy month. The best thing that we can do is to attach ourselves as much as we can to the Quran, and the very reason for which we were asked to fast in the month of Ramadan was because of the fact that the Quran was revealed in this month. And it is in our gratitude to this that we fast. So, therefore, it is all the more important that we are able to take time and try to understand and, of course, further this understanding as much as we can. So, I'm just going to share my screen with you for today's passage. So today we will be discussing, this is Surah Rum, which is the 30th Surah of the Quran. So we would be reading through verses 20 to 25, and just let me read the Arabic text and its translation before you. ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين ومن آياته منامكم بالليل والنهار وابتغاؤكم من فضله إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يسمعون ومن آياته يريكم البرق خوفا وطمعا وينزل من السماء ماء فيحيي به الأرض بعد موتها إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يعقلون ومن آياته أن تقوم السماء والأرض بأمره ثم إذا دعاكم دعوة من الأرض إذا أنتم تخرجون. And among his signs is that he created you from clay, and behold, you become human beings that spread out in the earth. And among his signs is also that he created spouses for you from among your species, so that you receive comfort from them. And he planted love and sympathy among you. Indeed, there are different signs in this for those who reflect. And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity in your languages and colors also. Indeed, there are different signs in this for people of knowledge. And among his signs is your sleeping at night and day seeking his bounty. Indeed, there are different signs in this for those who hear and understand. And from among his signs, he shows you lightning, which inspires fear in you and also hope, and sends down rain from the sky, and thus gives life to the earth after its death. Indeed, there are different signs in this for those who use their intellect. And among his signs is also that the heavens and the earth exist at his behest. Then, when he calls you just once to come out of the earth, you shall come out of it immediately. My dear participants and listeners, as you have read through this passage, one thing that might not have escaped your notice is these words, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, which means actually amongst his signs, amongst his various signposts that he has made this universe in a way that in order to recognize the fact that we have been created by an almighty God, and also to recognize the fact that one day we shall be held accountable before him, God has made copious and abundant arrangements in this world so that we never forget this reality. And because of the fact we know that the Quran was revealed to a tribal society in which, of course, the contact with nature was so close that citing nature as something from which we could deduce bigger realities and larger realities of life, or something which was, of course, required, and which was something which was by design. So we find the Almighty citing various elements of nature, the sun, the moon, the stars, the creation of men and women, the creation of day and night, the creation of spouses, the creation of the heavens and the earth, all these to be signs through which we must recognize that we have been created, and one day, because of these privileges that we have been blessed with, we shall be held to account, and we must never forget this status of ours. So this is how the Almighty has made so many arrangements by people who are just willing to open their eyes. It is for them that the Almighty says that these are signs, and there are so many signs. They are plentiful that all of us, if we are just open our eyes and instead of ignoring these signs, we just pay attention, we are bound to pick them up and draw a lesson from them. So to start off with these signs, the way they have been mentioned, the first thing that has been said is that among his signs is that he created you from clay, and behold, you become human beings that spread out in the earth. So the fact is that the Almighty started off creation in a manner that that the first of our kin, or the first of our family, was created directly from clay. And this is something which has been mentioned in detail in Surah Sajda, in which it is we are told that initially the first human beings were directly created from clay, and from amongst those human beings who were created from clay, there were some who were then given this ability to procreate themselves, and later they were perfected and given the faculties of sight, hearing, and intellect. And then from among these, one pair of Adam and Eve was selected, and the rest of mankind was the seed of one pair of man and woman, one husband and wife, Adam and Eve, and then they spread out in the rest of the earth, which of course gives us this huge reference to the fact that we are one human family. As far as mankind is concerned, they were born of a single pair of man and woman, or Adam and Eve, and the Almighty, when he created them, it was of course for a purpose, because we know that the Qur'an has elsewhere referred to the fact that the Almighty never does something which is beyond it or which is without any purpose. So this is how the Almighty began human life on this earth. And then it was not just this human life that he started. He said that among his signs is also that he created spouses for you from among your own species, so that you receive comfort from them. And he planted love and sympathy among you. So not only did he create humankind from a single pair of man and woman, what happened was that the Almighty made this affinity, this attraction between the spouses so strong that they came to one another, they came with one another, united with one another, and the purpose was to gain comfort from one another. And he planted love and sympathy وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً between them, and so that this is something which makes the family unit, in which is the basic unit of society, something which is really cherished. And this is a huge blessing of the Almighty. These favors, this favor that the family has come into being, a family in which a man and woman come together and they hide each other's imperfections. They come together as friends. They come together as people who actually tolerate one another in a way that they think that accommodating each other's imperfections and each other's habits is how this human cycle is going to function. And the love and the comfort that they can give to each other is immeasurable. So if a family is brought into existence on the right footing, we can clearly see how the spouses grow from one another, how the help they receive from one another, the support they receive. And they do think that there was a vacuum in their lives, and this vacuum has been fulfilled by this family unit. And it becomes a happy family unit if, of course, there is this sense which prevails between the spouses to accommodate one another, to live in a manner that they are able to think about each other, and of course they are absolutely faithful to one another. So this starts off the human family, and this is such a bliss if it comes into existence on the right footing, that everyone who passes through this can simply think that he or she is in a bliss, something which is unmatched. It could be rightly called a heaven on earth, as long as these principles and these emotions are adhered to in a way that we are able to take care of each other in a very, very generous way. And then these verses continue, and they say that and he planted love and affection, love and sympathy among you. Indeed, there are different signs in this for those who reflect. So, of course, the signs that we just talked about, that the family unit, which is brought into existence as a result of this, shows that the Almighty has a certain plan for us. And this plan can be gauged from the fact that humankind is to be developed in a way that they are one big family, and they are ones who realize that if they take care of each other, they would understand the fact that the very purpose of their existence and the very purpose for which the Almighty created them stands fulfilled. And among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity in your languages and colors also. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity, the variation in languages and colors, is something, my dear participants, is so it's so mind-boggling that we have so many different languages. It is virtually out of our own count that we can come to a figure in which we can say, well, these are the languages that are spoken on the planet Earth. There are probably thousands and thousands of these languages, and how efficiently people are able to communicate through these languages. Not only communicate through these languages, but also create literature of that language, which is absolutely ecstatic to read through if we are able to understand that language. Similarly, the colors, the diversity in colors and features that every human being has, this is so much diversity, such variation, that it's simply astounding. It's so amazing to see people communicate in such languages in different cultures, with different backgrounds, with different settings. But the communication is so free flowing. It's so thorough that it amazes us when we see people talking in different languages, and not just different languages. There are then sub-dialects of each language, and the way these dialects are affected by the territory that a person or people live in. And this can only happen if the Almighty has actually created mankind in a way that they are able to develop and express themselves. So the power of expression actually is something which is an unbelievable phenomenon. The power of expressing ourselves, the power of communicating, and this expression not only is through the spoken word, it's through the written word as well. And it's so unbelievable that one can only think that there is someone who has created this, diversity, this variation, this variety, so that we realize that there is a purpose to all this. The Almighty has not created these heavens and the earth without a purpose. They have a purpose. And the Quran actually speaks of this purpose at a number of places by saying that God has created the heavens and the earth bil haqq, with the truth, which means that they have a purpose. They are not meant to just provide amusement or facility to mankind, but they have a purpose in which people are going to be tested for their mettle, and these privileges that they draw from these various things that they are given, they'll be held accountable for them. And then it says, and among his signs, indeed there are different signs in this for people of knowledge, and among his signs is you're sleeping at night and day seeking his bounty. Indeed there are different signs in this for those who hear and understand. So the fact that our human body is in line with our outside world, so we naturally feel tired at night, and we naturally go to sleep at night because our bodies are prone to our external environment in a way that is so conducive. The nighttime is made to rest, and generally, of course, there are disruptions and there are exceptions which have resulted in these modern times in which everything has become topsy-turvy. Otherwise, leaving these last couple of decades, we can see that ever since mankind was created, how efficiently the night actually was meant for rest and the day for work. So the day to seek God's bounty, the night to rest. And this is not that, if it had been the other way around, it would have become extremely difficult for earning and for one's livelihood, because these things are always conducive in daytime. And how efficiently the daytime caters for this engagement, one can only think of. So this is something of a boon and a blessing from the Almighty. And then the verse says, these verses say, and from among his signs he shows you lightning which inspires fear in you and also hope, and sends down rain from the sky, and thus gives life to the earth after its death. So this again is a phenomena which is of really something which always catches our attention whenever we see the lightning, the thunderclap outside our homes. We do think that, well, this is the storm that is built up, and it's a storm which is coming, and this storm could just be this could overblow us, it just pass through us, or it could cause a lot of damage. And this, of course, as the verse say, it inspires fear as well. So what the verse has actually said is that when you see lightning, it inspires fear and also hope to the fact, well, yes, light, and the Almighty has sent down rain from the sky amidst this lightning, and the dead earth, which had gone totally dry and desolate, has once again revived because of this rain. So we generally tend to ignore this phenomena, but if we just once again, whenever we have the time to, in fact, we should take out time and find out and see how important this is, that when rain comes down on a dry piece of land which has totally died away, how it totally revigorates it, it invigorates it and rejuvenates it. That lush green vegetation once again appears after the land had gone dry. This is like a miracle which keeps happening every now and then with this rain. And because of this phenomena, and because of these phenomena which have been enumerated in this passage, we have this continuous reminder from the Almighty by the words that there are many signs for this for those who understand. And then it says, and among his signs is also that the heavens and the earth exist at his behest. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَن تَقُومَ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ بِأَمْرِهِ ثُمَّ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ دَعْوَةً مِنَ الْأَرْضِ إِذَا أَنْتُمْ تَخْرُجُونَ. Then when he calls you just once to come out of the earth, you shall come out, and come out of it immediately. So the fact that these heavens and the earth are existing, they are sustaining, they are providing us with sustenance, and they are providing us with livelihood, is another of God's signs, because they are intact, they remain in their position because God is looking after them, because He is behind them. Otherwise, as the verse says, that once this whole thing ends, it would be just a single call, and everyone would, after dying away, being in their graves, will come out of their graves and stand alone before the Almighty. And all that it will take is just one call. As you can see, the words are إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ دَعْوَةً. Just one call, just one shout, just one invitation, and people will come out of their graves immediately, signaling the fact that this is one of the greatest signs that we can, but that we should think that it is going to happen, because this world and these signs that we have just read through, they are not without any purpose. This world has a purpose. It's going to culminate in a purpose, and that purpose is that all of us shall be held accountable. And all these signs which this passage is alluded to actually refer this, and to try to caution and prod us that we must not let this huge reality escape our minds. So with these words, I end my talk on these verses, and now I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. For the raised hands, we have Fatma first. Fatma, please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask that in namaz, when we read Quran after Fatiha, do we have to follow the sequence of Quran?
No, we don't. I mean, there is nothing in the Sharia which tells us that we have to follow the sequence which is found in the Quran. We can just select passages at random in all the rakats. They need not be in a sequence.
So we don't have to follow the sequence? No. Okay, I have another question which is of a private nature. Can I text it to you through WhatsApp, or can I write it over here in the private window?
Yes, you can text it to me on my WhatsApp. I think you can take my number from the moderators.
Thank you. Rajni, you can have your question now.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Sir, from Surah Al-Mumin or Ghafir, verse number 11, this verse mentions Allah gives us death twice and life twice. As per my knowledge, I can understand the first life means when we were born, the temporal life in this world, and second life of hereafter, when we are resurrected, and first death is the end of life in this earth. So which is second death?
Well, when we are born out of, I mean, that state of being absent from this world and then being born is termed as the first death. So it's like being created from death to life, and then we die, and then we rise again. So our situation or our state before we were born is actually referred to as our first death. We did not exist. Then we existed for the first time, and then we die, and then we exist for the second time.
That is considered as a first. That means the death of the in the end of life is here considered is a second death.
Yes, that would be our second death.
Okay, sir, do you believe in questioning at the grave, in the grave?
Well, I've answered this question a number of times, and I've tried to explain that as far as the questioning in the grave or the grave torment or the grave punishment is concerned, it is related to a specific category of people. It's not meant for all mankind. They are the foremost adversaries of the prophets of God who had intentionally denied prophets of God and thereby had become worthy of punishment in this world. Their accountability and their account had already been settled in this world. It is for them that their punishment and their accountability will continue in the land of Barzakh and, of course, until the hereafter. For the rest of us, we are all put to sleep, and our accountability will take place on the day of judgment, and then, of course, heaven or hell will be one of our abodes or destinations.
If it is for them, then it is not considered that life will be 3 and death will be 3. Like in the grave, Nakir Munkir, the angel prop diseased uprighting in the grave and ask the question, then it will be the 3. Here,
well, that is a slightly different form. I understand what you're saying, because you see, what will happen in the grave will not happen in the way that we are given the form of a physical body. So the torment in the grave would actually happen to our souls. We would not be having our bodies, because of course they would be rotting in the graves, or they would have decayed in the graves. So the grave torment is actually something which will be undergone by the souls of these people. So therefore, that's a special kind of an exception. The life and death which the Quran refers to in this verse is the one in which life is there with the body and the soul, both the body and the soul. So in this case, what they would be suffering through would be just a suffering which relates to their soul.
Thank you. Adil Qureshi, you can have your question now.
Ji Salam, Dr. Sahab.
Right.
So, Dr. Sahab, this argument about the ikhtilaf, the difference in the color and the language of the people, I'm kind of struggling with this argument. I just want to sort of do a thought experiment on this first. If we presume that the way the mankind was, everybody was more or less of the same color, and everybody used to speak the same language or a similar language, which everybody sitting anywhere on the earth could have understood. Now, wouldn't that have been a much stronger argument of a single creator of all of the mankind? Why would the difference of color and the difference of language a stronger argument of a single creator and not the other way around?
This is because the diversity of color and languages that you can see cannot be something which can be other than produced by God, because humankind could never imagine something that things coming out of their own existence and spreading all over would have such diversity. So as far as one progenitor is concerned, of course, that is an argument to the fact that mankind was created through one Adam and Eve. The rest is the argument which tells us that from one pair of man and woman, look at how this diversity has resulted. So actually, it is like telling us that this diversity from a unity is something which could only have happened if we do understand that the Almighty had blessed these various genetic abilities in various people, so that by birth, when people spread out, they had so many variations. So basically, the unity at the top and then that divergence from the top is what is being referred to. So what you're referring to, of course, always exists. That unity was at the beginning. Of course, they spoke the same language. They were of the same color. But then the way things moved on, the way families were created, the way people had different habits, this shows the tremendous nature of creativity. The takhliq of the Almighty in such an astounding way that single pair of man and women which we would have probably thought of would result in some monotonous or some similar type of offspring, it became so diversified that it's so amazing that how this diversity resulted from one single thing, or from a unity. So it's like saying diversity from unity resulted, and not just diversity, it was a huge diversity that came into being.
Okay, so this argument, as I understand, the fact that all of this diversity came from such a unity, uh, that is the argument that says that yes, the power of the creator, or the magnificence of the creator, and the ability
Yes,
of the creator to do it
absolutely.
all over again.
To do it all over
Uh,
again, and of course to make us realize that this is how his power and his creativity is, that you should not think that he's just creating people, the same people over and over again. Every single person, I mean, you just start off by analyzing a person in your own family, people in your own, amongst your siblings, and you'll see how different the traits they have, the colors that they have, the language that they speak, the dialects that they speak, as you go along, is mind boggling.
Dr. Saleem, you can go ahead now.
Dr. Saleem, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for
Walaikum
explaining this ayahs very, very nicely. Now, my question actually tailgates Adil's question a little bit. And when you are reading the ayats, the prime purpose of reading the ayats in the way that you read them today was to show us the grandeur of Allah and to get us into awe of His omnipotence and omniscient nature, to show us how amazingly superb He is, to bestow all these positivities, all these great things on us.
Right.
But except for the first ayat where Allah has said that we have produced a human from mud or from earth, everything else is actually can be explained on a socio-psychological, evolutionary, historical chain. Every single thing from the thunder and the rain, which can be absolutely explained perfectly how it actually happened by a scientific phenomenon, to the evolutionary generation of families, how we evolved from chimps and how families were actually formed when chimpanzees changed their polygamous to monogamous nature. Everything can be explained on an evolutionary chain if one is willing to consider it on a larger historical evolutionary stage. If you once looks at the history of it, you can actually see it evolving in front of your own eyes. If one takes the time to read books on evolutionary, socio-psychological evolutionary point of view. So if you look at it from that angle, it doesn't seem that magnificent. Of course, we are the people of faith. When we read it from Qur'an, we are meant to be in the awe of these ayats. But from another person, another fresh pair of eyes, looking at it from a historical perspective, it just like it seems like a chain of events, like a sequence of things that were meant to happen. So how do you put these two theories together?
I think the way to do this is you just cannot draw a conclusion from a few verses like the ones that we have read. So you see, the whole of the Quran has a lot of things to offer when we talk about the theory of creation or the theory of evolution. So if you draw the conclusions from this particular passage that we have just studied, you could be right. But you see, what the Quran speaks of is that there is this creation behind the story of creation, or the theory of evolution in this creation, the way it has created mankind. In Surah Sajda, where it has actually started off and told us how mankind was actually brought into being by the Almighty, and how this whole chain started off. So you have to see the whole Quran in its totality to see that it's offering an entirely different worldview, a different story of creation, a different theory of creation, which actually features God as the origin of everything. I mean, He is the originator. He's who He has brought us through out of nothingness, created us. So when a fresh pair of eyes, as you refer to, is going to read this passage, so we would refer him to some of the other passages of the Quran, because you see, what happens is that the Quran continues to diversify and cite from various places at various instances. But in order to have a systematic reading of the Quran, it's always important that we refer to similar places and passages. So the fact that there is a creator, that the fact that he created this universe in a manner, they would be, these are the premises that perhaps could be discussed with such a person beforehand, and with reference to some of the other passages of the Quran which speak of the Almighty, who he is, his introduction, and what did he do, and what exactly is this universe, how it was formed, what exactly is the Quranic story of evolution, what type of evolution did take place according to the Quran. So I would say that this passage would not be sufficient for such a person to have a discussion. It would be a lot more things which are mentioned in the Quran at other instances, which I think I have been discussing in some of my other sessions, that would start off that discussion. And also, you see, you need to understand that every person with whom you have an argument or a discussion, he or she would have a different background and would come from a different background. So gauging that background, trying to understand where that person is coming from, and of course, gripping the knowledge of the Quran as well from various parts of the Quran. This is how we would try to discuss with the other person. And again, as I said, I do say this generally, that the purpose is to exchange this Quranic theory of knowledge and epistemology the way it has presented. It's not something which we are, trying to force the other person to convince. All that we are trying is to understand ourselves and convey this understanding on the basis of arguments. But as I said, this would happen through a systematic series of arguments based on the other person's questions and his or her mindset.
Shehzad, I have a written question. Should we give ushur, Islamic tax, for the income received from agricultural or horticultural products, for example, yield of apples, if we don't receive what we spend on it? Do we have to pay 5% even if we receive it less than was originally spent on it?
Well, as far as ushur is concerned, which is of course the tax or zakat, which is 10% on agricultural lands, which are rainy lands in which you are, of course, one part of your expenditure is covered by the Almighty's element of rain, of course. These are the lands in which you get 10%. Other than that, lands in which you have to water the land yourselves and do that the labor stuff also yourself, that would be 5%. So I'm not sure if I understood the rest of the question, because I'm trying to answer it in principle that yes, agricultural income would be taxed at 10% if you're dealing with rainy lands or lands which are rain-fed, and with non-rain-fed lands you would be paying 5%, and this would be on the gross income that you get, not on the net.
Perhaps they're saying that what they spend on the crop in the process during the planting, they did not receive it while harvesting.
Yes, so therefore you have to regard this ushur as an expense itself. So you will not subtract the expenses, for example, the seeds that you bought maybe, or you spent some other items. So you have to treat zakat, whether it's ushur or which is on agricultural lands, or zakat, which is on money, as an expense. And whenever you give it, you have to give it on the gross income. So you will not subtract anything that you spent on it. As people would think that maybe it's on your net wealth in which you subtract the expenses. This is not the case. In all situations, zakat or tax is on gross income.
Okay, I hope it is clear now. Fatma, you can have your question now.
I wanted to ask that revenge is allowed in Islam. For example, qasas is allowed. But what about revenge for emotional abuse? Is that also allowed in Islam? And if yes, then in what manner can we seek revenge for emotional abuse in an Islamic manner without breaking the
Yes, the Quran is, yes, I understand your question. The Quran has given us clear guidance on this as well. It says, "Jazā'u sayyi'atin sayyi'atu misluha." For any evil can be recompensed with an equal magnitude. The only thing is that the revenge that you take should not involve any immorality, because this is another important precept, that yes, you can seek revenge, but that revenge should not be of immoral or unethical nature. So anything that is done to you, you can pay back in equal coins. If you think that there is some emotional harm done to you, and you can inflict that emotional harm in any way without actually being immoral, then yes, that can be done. However, if it involves immorality or something which is against decency, then that should be abstained from.
You can ask your question now.
Yes. So, what is difference between Sunnah and Hadith? And why Sahaba and Prophet and at that time did not generate Hadith? Almost after 300 years after death of Prophet, it was created. So, what is the authenticity of Hadith? How can we, the common people, understand which Hadith is Sahih and which is not? Because they filtered it with their thought, their belief. Might be their correct thing was eradicated.
Yes, absolutely, you're correct. So these is like narrations, historical narratives that have been handed down in history, and because of the fact that they have been handed down in a way which does not lend them the certitude which the Sunnah has, which, by the way, is the established practice of the Prophet, which was transmitted through the practice of the companions. On the contrary, Hadith, of course, they are isolate reports which are transmitted by a few people to a few people, and there is always a chance of they getting distorted. So therefore, the scholars of Hadith, they always judge these reports in the light of the Quran, in the light of the Sunnah, in the light of common sense, in the light of established reason, in the light of established precepts of knowledge and reason. So these are some of the criteria against which scholars of Hadith judge reports. So as far as a common man is concerned, what he or she should do is that if there is a narrative which raises a question in his mind or her mind, scholars should be consulted, and they should be asked whether this narrative does make sense, or maybe it has been misunderstood, or maybe it has been misquoted or miscited. So of course they are not equipped themselves to judge a narrative, because that requires some additional competence. So that for that you need to have recourse to these scholars. So for common person, the correct attitude would be to go through these narratives, and if there is a question which arises in his or her mind regarding something which might not make sense, then I think the best way would be to consult a scholar, and he or she would perhaps enlighten that person in that case.
Sir, in Bukhari Sharif, all hadiths are Sahih hadith.
So this is a very common misconception. The word Sahih, when it is spoken in the Arabic language, is not the Sahih of the Urdu language, which means correct. Sahih is a certain class or category of narratives which stands up to five tests or to five criteria, which the scholars of Hadith have adjudicated. So the word Sahih doesn't mean correct. It just refers to a category of narratives which according to them occupy the highest degree of being correct. And this, of course, is the research of a few people, and some other people can come along, or some other researchers can critique the understanding of any other researcher and tell us that what you have regarded to be technically Sahih is in fact not Sahih, and there are some flaws in it. And scholars of our Ummah have continuously done this. Thus, for example, Imam Darqutni has raised questions about many narratives in Bukhari, and he has written a book on Bukhari. Similarly, people coming after him, after Darqutni, for example, in current times, like scholars like Manna Imadi, Habibur Rahman Kandilvi, they have raised questions about many narratives which are found in Bukhari, and shown that how at times the earliest authorities which regarded certain narratives to be technically okay, they were missing certain information, or they overlooked certain information, and ultimately the criteria which they applied to those narratives were applied because of the fact that they were ignorant of certain details. And if those details are furnished, then you might end up rejecting that narrative. So this is a continuous process of critically evaluating the material that has been handed down to us in history.
Shiraz Ahmed, you may have your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, Shehzad Bhai.
Walaikum assalam.
Shehzad Bhai, the question is regarding Surah Sabah, chapter 34, verse 14. So I will keep it very precise. It's regarding Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam death, right? So everything that the verse says is clear that the jinns, they don't know the knowledge of unseen, gap, and they were punished. Prophet Sulaiman most probably put them to a labor. That was a very harsh labor as a punishment for them, and God wanted them to continue that labor, and God didn't intend to know them about the death of Prophet Sulaiman. So everything makes sense in the verse. This just one thing that's missing. I'm clearly saying that it's missing from the Quran, that it gives an impression that when the termites eat the staff, then they came to know that most probably Prophet Sulaiman fell down, right? He was already dead. Then they came to know that he's dead. Now, the Quran doesn't tell us the details of this incident. And the question that mostly comes is that how come for such a long time he was standing in a one static position and the jinn never noticed it? Because that doesn't require ilm ghaib. It just requires common observation. Even a man can do it, that if a person is standing there, even for several hours in one position without blinking an eye. So how we answer that?
Well, I think this is fairly easy to answer, because you see, when the purpose of this was to make the jinn understand the fact that they don't know the news of the ghaib, and they could be, they actually were fooled by this. All that it required, as we know from our history, is that in a certain position, they were made to see Solomon standing there in the balcony, and they could always be the fact that curtains were drawn at times and they were just taken off at other times, and even his position could have been turned to one place or the other. And other than that, this gave that impression that he was alive and he was watching them. So remember, it's not that they were always looking and finding out whether he was there. At times, this was their thinking which made them actually realize that yes, he is there, but without always looking at them, because when someone is continuously standing, you are not always, looking back and seeing whether he is there or not. So yes, initially you would look at that person for longer periods of time, and then when you would realize that, well, he's always standing there, you would concentrate more on your work and less on him being present. And because of the fact that this is something which could have been divinely driven in a manner that people who were there knew that this was important for Solomon or for the jinn to realize what the happening was actually. So I think this was something which was divinely ordained as well. And they continued in this manner. And if you look at history, you'll find out that this has happened to a number of kings as well for a very long periods of time, because you see, one of the things that is very grave is the issue of succession. And unless a successor is fully or properly appointed, the news is not broken about the death of a monarch, and at times he or she is made to look as if he or she was alive. If you look at a lot of stories in our human kingdom as well. So if you look at those stories, you'll find out that how efforts were made to make the onlookers realize that, well, someone is still living, whereas the purpose was to delay this news. So I think on a very similar note, you can see that Solomon was made to stand in that balcony in a way that he could have at times there were curtains drawn, at times he was just sort of changed a little in his position, and this only could go along as far as he was able to stand, because as you said, he was standing on the support of a stick or a staff, and as long as that was there, they could not detect it. So I think it's also a question of human psyche, that once you start realizing that someone is watching you, and when after a couple of days you think that he is there, you sort of continue without giving more attention to this fact. And it was only after he fell down that they realized that what actually had happened.
And on one such incident, without the people who are making these arrangements of not letting the genies know, with the decree of Allah, the staff broke. And then they came to realize that he's no more there. Okay, yeah. Got it.
I'm sorry, we'll accommodate the further raised hands tomorrow's session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.